Friends actually started a meeting here in 1668. We were one of the first in the New World, if you will. And that it was actually on the present site where the burial ground still is today. Where Cecil Burial Ground is still today on 298, right outside of Lynch. The burial ground hasn't changed, and the meeting house was adjacent to that, essentially where 298 is right now. And they put it there because at the time it was very accessible by multiple bodies of water, multiple creeks, and things like that. And obviously that was the easiest way to travel back then and the fastest. And so that's why the original location was picked. And at the time, the families who sort of established Lynch were willing to become part of the meeting and huge proponents of it. So sort of donated some land, were the caretakers of it. And so, like I said, the burial ground still stands today. We still bury our friends there. It's still under the care of our meeting and has been since 1668. There actually was a Chester River meeting as well out in Quaker Neck building, but a structure still stands. It's a private home today, but it's still out in Quaker Neck. And there was a meeting in Millington, and that graveyard is still present, and it's currently a park that the town kind of maintains with some help. And there's a very still vibrant meeting in Easton. So we've been in the area for quite some time. So what happened in that interim is George Fox, who actually founded Quakerism, traveled to America and came through the Eastern Shore. And so his goal was really to organize all of the meetings. He felt we were getting a little loosey-goosey, and so he came over and whipped everybody into shape. And because of that, we saw quite a bit of conversion, quite a few meetings started, or at least becoming official and organized. Between 1800 and 1850 is really when we lost quite a few Quakers from this area. That is when a lot of the bigger cities were growing. Many young people were moving to Baltimore. It's sort of when Chestertown as well, was no longer a colonial, seaport. And so just commerce and, for all the reasons still that people move around. And so by 1900, that meeting had been what we called laid down. Cecil had been laid down. The original frame structure had become a brick structure and expanded at some point. And then in 1900, they kind of closed their doors and it fell into disrepair. It essentially fell down. They tried to revive a meeting in the 40s, 1942, but because of the World War, it just didn't get the traction. Tried again in the early 60s. Again, just didn't quite get the traction it needed. And then in 1971, a group of Washington College students and some others associated began meeting actually in Peter Tapke's house on High Street. And then after a few years, they had outgrown that in a good way, and so met at the library for a few years. And then in the early 80s, decided that they really needed their own meeting house. And there was a structure on the back of a residence on Washington Avenue that had been an kind of artist studio, and they were able to detach it, move it, roll this structure onto a foundation they built to create the meeting house in 1984. It really just became more of a burden than an asset. And the way I looked at it was, one of the foundations of Quakerism is, letting go of material goods. And so if this is what was burdening our meeting, then maybe it was time to let go of that burden. And especially because the Presbyterian Church welcomed us with open arms with a meeting space and with amenities and things like that. So we were able to get back to the worship and what we thought was important without sort of that, the buildings and grounds hanging over our head. I think because of a lot of what's happening in the U.S. and in the world right now, many people are attracted to Quakerism because it is a centered, quiet, can worship your own way, and the activism that Quakers have always had is, just as important now on a lot of different topics as as it has been. So I think it's getting a renewed appeal with a lot of people, especially in the U.S. There is a gigantic Quaker population overseas, especially in Africa. Gigantic. I don't know the numbers, but I would hazard that there's probably more there than practicing than in the U.S. I mean, it's huge. I think it's also become very attractive to our much younger crowd, high school, college age. We always get some college students from Washington College who have been either brought up Quaker or discovered Quakerism and want to continue that while they're here. And I think it appeals to them. It appeals to that activist side if they have it, or it appeals to that sort of just quieter, slightly more unorganized worship style. We get quite a few people searching, either coming from other churches or not, have just moved here and are looking for sort of a community. And then, we get the retirees, we get the, like everybody else. Like I said, every year we get some college students or, faculty or administrators. Quite a few students who are brought up Quaker are attracted to Washington College. I'm a prime example because of the liberal arts style that it has and because of just the location. We're right around a lot of Quaker high schools, kind of in the Mid-Atlantic area. So quite a few come to Washington College, and we get them that way because they're looking for a local meeting to attend while they're here. So if someone is interested in Quakerism, and it's sort of just in a casual way, we'll say, we encourage them to be what we call an attender. They can come as much as they want, be as involved as they want without becoming a member. If they find that it's really appealing to them, the Chester River meeting recommendation is that they attend meeting for about a year, just to really kind of go through the cycle and get a feel for it, attend a business meeting, things like that. We encourage them to be kind of an attender for a while to make sure it's a good fit for them before they jump into membership. And, we have some people who just remain attenders for their entire lives. I mean, they don't become a member, and that's okay. They're still part of our community, and to be perfectly honest, especially here in Chestertown, we don't really tell the difference. There's kind of two types of worship nowadays: the programmed and the unprogrammed. So the programmed, which is a little more popular out west than it is on the East Coast, has a minister, has singing, it's much more of a formula. To me, it's very similar to a Methodist service. It's probably the closest I can come up with. In this area, we're all unprogrammed meetings. So we don't have a minister. We do have a clerk. So I'm the clerk of Chester River that I'll call myself a coordinator, of things, especially administratively. And the clerk usually kind of settles everybody and ends the meeting. But within the hour, we're sitting in silence. And some people are more centered than others, depending on the day. And anybody who is led to can speak on any topic. It could be, I just heard this beautiful poem, all the way to I'm struggling with this conflict, to I've been thinking about God in this way and I'd like to share it, you name it. Sometimes that spurs a series of messages from others on the same topic. Sometimes it's somebody gets up 10 minutes later on a completely different topic. And many times we can go the whole hour with no one speaking, but we're there in camaraderie and sort of sharing the space. If you've ever meditated, it's it's a very similar feel, I guess you could say. It's a Christian faith, so, and everything that comes along with that in the New Testament. But again, because we're focusing on God being in everyone, that makes it take a different form in terms of, I'll say, pure theology, if that makes any sense. And because of the firm belief of not as much nowadays because it's 2021, but the release of material goods and burdens in order to focus on your spiritual, life, sometimes dictates something. So, you mentioned Christmas. I can remember my dad growing up and saying, they had some presents on Christmas morning for the kids, but it's not the same type of holiday. Like we've done kind of a Christmas pageant in the past, again, for the kids, but we don't necessarily have, a big Christmas service or anything like. Same with Easter. Because again, the idea is that why should we only be focusing on God on certain days if we should be focusing on him every day, that kind of thing. So that's probably the two biggest influences on, the practice and the outlook and we don't focus on the 12 apostles. We don't even focus on the Virgin Mary. So even though we are Christian and do many things with the Bible, of course, again, we're not trying to focus on one individual. We're trying to focus on, God in every single person. So.